Welcome to the EASC Phone Line Volunteer Training. My name is Tony, and I am an addict, and I am the current phone line coordinator for the Eastern area of Narcotics Anonymous. The training you're about to watch is required for anyone who wishes to volunteer to answer the phone line for Narcotics Anonymous in the Eastern area. You warm up things. One thing we try to do is make managing or being a part of our phone line as easy as possible. There are no call logs that you have to keep. But one pro tip we do suggest to people is that you might want to keep a journal of the calls you receive, only so that you can keep track of maybe questions that come up or share experiences with other people that volunteer for the phone line. Being a volunteer for our phone lines becomes simpler in the sense that we only have one line to remember now. For a while, if you've been in the Eastern area, you know that we had two phone lines. So we had a 918 as well as an 888. When we made some changes earlier this year, we have switched now to just one phone line number, our 888. The 918 number still will work for Eastern area. It actually just forwards to our 888. But the reason that we've gone to just one line is we now have some neat features, which we'll talk a little bit more about in the training, where you can get a text message that gives you directions. That only takes place on the 888 number. So we just have that one line to remember now. The other thing is hopefully the reason that you're here is you understand that this is a service that can save addicts and help them get clean. Um, there's just nothing like that feeling you get when you realize that you've helped someone get to meetings. This happened to me very recently. I got a call on the hotline about 3 weeks ago, and it was from an addict who had a very unique name. So when I went to noontime the other day, I saw that person in the meeting, and I knew exactly that that had to have been the person. And it was just really neat to see that they not only were coming to meetings, but it appeared like they were, getting active in the recovery. There's nothing quite like, realizing that that's something you can help do. One of the big things that we want to do as a committee is we want to try to make sure that volunteering for our phone line can be, hopefully a pleasurable experience and hopefully stress free and pretty simple to do. And we think you'll realize by the time we're done with this training that it is really a simple thing that can be done. So let's get into some of the phone line objectives and the volunteer requirements. The main objectives that we have, and the first primary objective is our main objective on the phone line is just to get them to a meeting. There's a lot of phone lines will try to provide 12-step calls as well as rise to meetings. That's not something we're currently doing as with our Eastern area phone line. Our main objective is just to get them to a meeting, and once they get there, that's where we hope they'll learn more about NA. Now, while we're doing that, oftentimes we want to make sure that we convey to them that the NA program can work, and really our personal experiences are the best way that we can share that. Particularly if it's someone who's questioning whether they really need to have meetings, all we can do is share that it's something that's worked for us. And then the big thing is we want to make sure they hear and feel that, hey, we care and we just want to help. And that's the only way that recovery works for us is by passing it on to others. Hopefully they'll have that feeling, and that's something that will get them to a meeting. First thing, let's talk a little bit about what NA does not do, and we want to make sure that this is something that we communicate when we answer the phone line. NA does not affiliate with any specific detox units, treatment centers, recovery houses, halfway houses. Even though we have a lot of those in our Eastern area, we don't want to necessarily affiliate with any of those. NA does not crusade or try to drag people into the door. We're traction rather than promotion. We just want to help people get to our meetings. We don't engage in any kind of research. We're not collecting membership records. We're not keeping case histories. None of that's passed on to any other organization. We can't give any kind of medical or psychological help, diagnosis, counseling, anything like that. That's not something that NA does. We can't provide welfare or other social services. No, we do help each other particularly when we get into meetings and we get to know each other, but it's not something that NA advertises or can commit to do. We certainly do not conduct any religious services of any kind, and we certainly do not affiliate with any specific religion. We don't engage in any kind of education or propaganda about drugs. We're just here to talk about recovery. And we don't accept any money from anyone. We're self-supporting, we don't have any support from any other organization. Couple things that we do want to do when we're answering the phone line is we want to make sure we carry a clear NA message. Remember that you may be the first contact that they have with NA. Have had that happen with me a couple times as I answer the phone line. It was the first time that they've tried to get to a meeting. So I may be the first contact that they have with Narcotics Anonymous. So how I present myself can be very important. We want to make sure we encourage the addict to get to a meeting by making sure they have directions, day, location, everything that they need to get to that meeting, because that's really where they're going to find out more about our program. Or remember that if we want to avoid giving any kind of affiliation with any other organization, there may be times when we need to do a referral. It's obvious that maybe the caller has some other kind of need. We want to make sure that we give the disclaimer that we're not affiliated, we can't endorse, but hey, maybe you should try calling this other service. And we do have a list of some numbers in our guideline. There are some services that they can be referred to. But again, we don't necessarily support them or affiliate with them. And the big thing is just keep an open mind and have willingness to learn not only from this training, but also from our guidelines. We know that everyone comes to service with their own experiences, and you certainly want you to use that as providing your services. But keep in mind that there's a lot of learnings that we've had, and we try to incorporate that into our phone line guideline, and we hope you have a willingness to learn from those. Few more things that we don't do. We already mentioned we're not affiliated with any other organization, so we don't want to suggest any specific hospitals, detox centers, et cetera. We just need to say, hey, maybe you want to get to a treatment center, and then we're not the ones to refer them to that. We don't want to give any medical advice. Certainly, even if you have medical training, that's not something we want to do on behalf of NA. So we want to refer them to someone else. Of course, if it's an emergency, get them to 911. We don't want to have long conversations on the helpline. This was more important with our previous system because if you stay on the hotline, it may not let another caller in. That's not how it works in our current system. So it's less important. I mean, once they get a call and they ask to talk to an addict, it actually transfers to that other addict's number. So another call can come in. But at the same time, we're not a counseling service. I mean, we want to, convey to them, try to do whatever we can to get them to go to a meeting. And then it's that doesn't necessarily require that we stay for long conversations to do that. We don't want to give any personal opinions, make sure that, keep in mind you're representing NA. So it's best to quote our literature, stay specific on what NA does and not necessarily what just our personal opinions might be. Keep in mind that you're not required to take any kind of abuse in this service. Now, and there's times that it might get a little edgy on a call. I've actually had this happen to me a couple months ago. I got a call one evening from a gentleman, and it was obvious that he was hired in a kite, and he was resentful from the get-go. And I tried to, ask him a couple times, "Hey, can you calm down? I want to try to help you find a meeting," but he still was being belligerent. And I finally said, "Hey, I'm gonna have to hang up," and that's what I had to end up doing. Now the good news is a couple minutes later, he ended up calling back. I answered the call again, and he was a lot calmer. I didn't even have to ask him this time to stay calm. I think he got the message, so it worked out well. But again, you don't have to take abuse. You have the right to hang up. We're not here to persuade the caller to stop using. That's a big important thing. I mean, even if they're high at the time of talking to you, that's not our job to help them stop using. It's just like when they come to meetings, we can't control that. Only requirement to come to our meetings is just to have a desire to stop using it. It isn't about necessarily stopping. That's the next step. Then a big thing is anytime that you're doing something on the phone line, you want to make sure you don't break anyone's anonymity. I mean, obviously you've told them who you are, and that's the only experience you can share from. But it's very important to protect anyone else's anonymity. Even like in a case we'll talk about later, where you might refer them over to our PR or public relations committee. You don't want to say, "Hey, yeah, I'll give you Keith's email or Keith's phone number." You just want to say, "Hey, I'll switch you over to the PR chair, and here's an email." It protects the anonymity of the individual that's doing that. We don't want to break anyone else's anonymity when we're on the phone line. Big important rule: do not give out anyone's personal phone number. Even your own. I mean, that's not what we're doing on this hotline. You can let them know that once they get to a meeting, a lot of meetings they pass around and they share phone numbers. That's a big part of NA. but we don't want to do it as part of this phone line. When they're getting a call from you, you're just generically the phone line. Want to make sure we don't make any promises to addicts that we can get them rides or a place to stay or any other kind of service. NA can't do that, even though some groups might provide that once they get to a meeting. And you may tell them, say, hey, some groups do help out with rides, stuff like that, but you'll have to get to a meeting and ask for that help. The big thing is make sure they know to ask for that help. I don't think our current system allows this, but if for some reason it ever does happen, do not accept a collect call. That's something you should never do on our phone line. We don't want you to answer the phone line at any time if you are driving or otherwise unable to be fully focused on the caller. And this is for two reasons. I mean, number one, we want to make sure that your safety is first and foremost. So we don't want you to feel like you have to get on the phone lines. It's so important to do that. We try to staff our phone line 3 people deep so that if for some reason you can't answer, it's going to roll over to someone else. And even if all three can't answer, it's going to give them the ability to leave a message that we can get back to them. Never put yourself in jeopardy just to answer that call. The other part of it is you want to make sure that you're able to focus. So even, say it's your call time and it is supposed to be your call, but all hell breaks loose at home and you just cannot focus on that call. Let it roll over to the next person. I mean, you want when you're answering a phone line call, you want to be able to give them your undivided attention because again, that goes to presenting to them, NA and what we do. And the big thing is don't take yourself too seriously. I mean, when you're doing this phone line, it should be pretty straightforward, but you are not responsible for the results of what you do. It's kind of like when you share in a meeting. When I share in a meeting, I'm not responsible for whether someone hears that message. I can just share it. That's the only part that I can do. Now let's talk a little bit about the volunteer requirements. Hopefully, you know that there's a 6 month requirement of clean time. So you have to have continuous 6 months of continuous clean time in order to be on the phone line. If some reason you end up relapsing or losing that clean time, you need to let us know right away, and we'll have to take you off the phone line until you get that 6 months once again. A big step is to make sure that you read through the phone line guidelines. A lot of the stuff that I'm covering here in this training is covered in those guidelines, but there's a lot more in there that it's important that you know. So you need to read through those guidelines completely in order to consider this training complete. There's a link to this here, and I will actually show you how to get to that to the website here in a few minutes. We also want to make sure that you attend a phone line orientation. That's what you're doing by watching this video. We want you to have a knowledge of the 12 steps of Narcotics Anonymous. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to work through all 12 steps. It doesn't mean that you have to be on 5, 6, or whatever number. It means that you need to be in a step process because that is part of our program. And in particular, the first couple steps can be a real important thing to share with someone newly trying to find a meeting. So have some knowledge of the 12-step process. We also expect that you have some knowledge of the traditions. It doesn't mean you have to have it memorized, but there's some real key, big concepts that we hope most people who come to our meetings have an idea of. And those are things like, the only requirement for membership is desire to stop using. Our primary purpose is to carry the message. We never endorse other facilities. When we do things, we do it non-professionally. We have no opinion on outside issues, attraction rather than promotion. And then this whole concept of protecting anonymity. It ain't about the individual, it's about what we do, and it can oftentimes be important that we don't share other people's identity. Those concepts you need to have some knowledge of. You need to also have a willingness to contribute your personal time and serve when you agree to serve. I mean, if at the end of this you decide that you're going to be a volunteer, you're going to set up a day and time in the week that you're going to be available. We expected you to follow through with that. So if you say you're going to be available from 3 to 6 on Mondays, you need to make that a priority and have your schedule available for that. If it comes time that you're not able to do that, let us know and we'll change the setup. And at the very minimum, we ask that you sign up for at least 1 3-hour shift. I mean, that's at the minimum that you need to do. If it's 1 or 2 hours, we want to have a longer time. You can do more than 3 hours, and many of our volunteers do longer than that, but at least 1 3-hour shift per week. You need to have ready access on the most recent meeting schedule for Eastern area. If you don't know, our meeting schedule changes, and it doesn't change a lot month to month, but it does get updated monthly, usually towards the end of the month. And that printed meeting list is always going to be on the website. The website search It's going to be updated as we get new information. So if someone, group lets us know that there's been a change, we'll change that immediately on the search on the website, but it only happens once a month on the printed copy. Another requirement is you need to be willing to reach out to our phone line coordinator. Easiest way to get a hold of them is going to be phone@eascna.org and let them know if you've had changes in your schedule. So if for some reason, even if it's a temporary, if you're going to be traveling for a couple weeks and you don't think you're going to be available during your times, it's not an inconvenience to let the phone line coordinator, hey, I can't do it for the next couple weeks. We can change the schedule and then change it back when you return. We want you to be willing to keep some kind of communication going. It's not always monthly, but and we typically do this by email. Let the phone line coordinator if your schedule changes. Oftentimes, sometimes the phone line coordinator will send out an email to all the volunteers. Perhaps there's some additional learnings we've had, or maybe some changes. Just be willing to have that communication via email. And then lastly, all you can do is be willing to give accurate information to fellowship. We don't expect you to know everything. If you do get a call and it's something that you don't know about, have no problem with saying, I don't know. That's okay to do. But you can also say, hey, can I take your number? I can pass you on to, I can give your number to someone else and they can reach back out to you with that information. Before we go on to the next topic, I want to take a moment to show you where you can find the phone line resources on the Eastern Area webpage. So this is our Eastern Area webpage, and we have a Public Relations Committee page. And on there, you will see that there are links to the guidelines. So this is the guidelines that I've mentioned that you need to go through and read through that to complete this training. There is more detail in there than what we'll be covering in this training. There is also the slides that I'm going through in this training. So if you want to go back and look at those, it can be there as well as some additional links from our Narcotics Anonymous World site that have information related to volunteering for phone line. Now, the way that you find this, if you go to the main page, so you go to eascna.org, you'll get to our main page. One of the first things you'll see is there's a meeting list, a link to get to the meeting list. But over in the on the right side, you will see a link to EASC Executive Committee. And then towards the bottom of that, you will see Public Relations Committee. And that is where you'll find the links for the phone line information. And you can always just send an email to phone@easc.org and they can send you links to this information as well. Next, I just want to take a few minutes to talk about crisis situation. If you do end up with a situation where a crisis takes place, and it could be, someone calling, they've got a written, they're there, and an addict is overdosing or something like that. Keep in mind, we are not a hotline for crisis situations. And the first thing is you want to always make sure you just stay calm. You know, that's the best thing we can bring to their situation. If they truly, and you figure out that they truly are in a crisis, I mean, we are not able to give any kind of medical advice. Again, even if you have medical training, please don't try to do that. If you suspect it is crisis, best thing we can do is refer them to 911 and let them get that information. If it's a friend or family calling, and it's the addict is in really bad shape, please let them know, hey, call us back when they get through this crisis, and then we can hopefully help them get to a meeting. Another thing we want to touch on is NA, and we do not try to provide any kind of services to identify drugs. We don't want to try to do that. Sometimes you might get called, hey, my brother took these pills out of a bottle. I'm not sure what they are. Can you help me figure it out? We cannot provide that. Even if you really think you know what it is, or can help out with that, that's not what we do. We're just here to get the addict to a meeting. If you are to get a call from the media or from a professional, say like a counselor or a treatment professional, we do use our hotline to take calls like that. Any calls that we get from media or from a professional should be referred to our public relations committee, and specifically our PR chair. And the best way to reach out to them is going to be through the email. So you can give them the email of the PR chair. It's PR at eascna.org. If it doesn't feel like they want to email, they just want to talk it through, you certainly can take, some notes from the call, make sure you find out what the call is about, who they are, what organization they're with, get their phone number, and then you can, after the call, you could email that to the PR chair and say, hey, I took this call on the phone line, and here's their contact information. And then they'll take it from there. So let's talk a little bit about answering a call. Um, once you get a call on the phone line, keep in mind that it's going to call you from the EASC phone line, so it's going to appear like the phone line's calling you, and you're going to get a recording on there saying press one to accept it. If you do not press one, let's just say you don't answer the call. If you don't answer the call, it's going to roll over to someone else. If you answer the call until you press one, it does not become your call. But once you do press one, it's going to immediately connect you to the addict. So the first thing you want to do is, hey, my name is Tony and I'm an addict. You don't necessarily have to tell them Narcotics Anonymous because that's who they call. But if you say Narcotics Anonymous, my name is Tony and I'm an addict, that's fine as well. The big thing you want to let them know, this is not an answering service. We're an addict. So that's an important thing to let them know. So make sure you identify yourself to them. Keep in mind that they will not have your personal phone number. It's going to appear to them, even though it transfers to you, it's going to appear to them that they're still on the hotline number. Whenever we answer call, we always want to be professional and be courteous. Again, we're maybe the first reflection they have of NA. If a caller becomes abusive, ask them to calm down. If they don't, you can end the call. Feel comfortable doing that. Remember, don't try to give advice or try to argue with them. Just want to try to get them to a meeting. And again, it's our responsibility to try to be a positive example of what NA does because they're going to know we're a member of NA. I mentioned this before, but again, keep in mind the Eastern area currently does not manage rides or 12-step calls from their phone line. Now, this certainly is something that groups can do, and it may be even something that your personal group does. But keep in mind that we don't want to do that from the phone line. When you're on the phone line, you're representing the phone line, not necessarily your home group. Once they get to a meeting, hopefully that's something that they can get help with there. Again, our primary goal is just to help them get to a meeting. So since this is a recording, there's no way that I can ask you if you have any questions. One thing I want to make sure that you do is when you go and look at the phone line guidelines online, at the end of that, there is a set of 30 plus questions that are just kind of frequently asked questions we've gotten before. Please take the time to go through those. Those are some really good questions and some well thought out answers on how we might respond. And certainly if you have any additional questions that have come up as we've gone through this, don't be afraid to send an email to the phone at eascna.org. So next, let's talk a little bit about how our phone line system works. We have gone through some more recent changes at the beginning of 2024. We actually switched over our phone line system. We used to have a system that was basically a recording of our meetings and had the ability they could switch to an addict. But now we have a system that integrates with our online search. That system is called YAP. That's just a short name for it, but it integrates with something called our basic meeting list tool or BMLT, which I'll show you a little bit more about here soon. But basically, when someone calls the phone line, they will have a recorded voice. It will give them the option to press one to speak to a live addict or two to search for a meeting by city or zip. If they select one, they may be talking to you if you're on schedule. If they select two, then they'll be given the option to search for by city or county or by zip. And it'll by voice ask them one of those two, and it'll give them a response. And then it's going to give them the next four meetings by voice over the phone. And it's also going to send them a text that will appear that will come from the phone line. And that's what this image the text that they'll get looks just like this image. Nice thing is it gives them a hyperlink. If they have a smartphone, it's going to give, they click on that link, it's going to give them directions on how to get to that meeting. Important thing to remember, our phone line no longer gives a recording for the entire meeting or the entire week. They just have meetings for that day, the next four within 50 miles of where they're at. If for some reason they need meetings for another day, they're going to have to call back on that day to get more information. So what's behind the scenes on the information that they get when for meeting list information, it gets data from what I already mentioned is our basic meeting list toolbox or BMLT. This is the database that powers our web search found on our website, and we'll look at that more in just a minute. The phone line is only going to return, as I mentioned before, the next 4 meetings within 50 miles. If they want something different, they have to call back or they need to switch to an ag to talk to them. If it's in a bigger city like Tulsa, zip code might be more effective than the city. Obviously, there's several zip codes for the Tulsa area. And then the big thing keep in mind is it only if the meeting is in the past, it's not going to give them that meeting. So example here is if it's 7 p.m., um, it'll only give them that meeting until 7:15, and then after 7:15, it won't no longer give that 7 p.m. meeting. An important thing to let the caller know, and I've done this with several people that I've responded to, is that, hey, now that you've called this number and you have this phone number on your phone, if you just need meetings for, if today's Tuesday and you want meetings for Thursday, you can always text back. You don't have to call it. You can just text back to this 888 number, and it will give you, if you just text the zip code or the city, it'll give you the next 4 meetings that particular day. So make sure they know that that's a tool that they can use going forward. A big thing to keep in mind, the way that our system works, if they just give a city, sometimes that city name, if it's common in other areas, and an example I give here is with Liberty. If you just put Liberty in our system, since our system has meetings all over the country, it's going to default to New Jersey. Can't tell you why it does that, but it does. It's going to give if you put Liberty, it's going to give them Liberty, New Jersey. So in order to get Oklahoma, they have to put Liberty, comma, okay. They can also do Liberty MO for Missouri or Liberty, Texas. A lot of the cities, fortunately that we have in Eastern area are unique. So like Tulsa, it's only going to give you Tulsa, Oklahoma. If for some reason they don't get a response when they try to get this text, that doesn't mean the system is broken. It just means that there is no meetings within a 50-mile radius on that day. And there certainly are places where places and times that will occur. We actually have expanded our search radius in the Eastern area to try to limit the amount of times that they'll get no response because we just kind of figured no response is bad. Now, another thing to keep in mind, and this is something you might end up needing to pass on to a caller, is that when they're calling and they're using the voice response to ask for a meeting, they need to keep in mind that it's listening for a voice response. So there may be times that background noise can create a problem. So if someone switches over to you to talk to you and they say, "Hey, I tried to find meetings for Muskogee, and it keeps giving me, meetings for somewhere else." Well, it might be that they have background noise, particularly if they're using their phone on speaker. It's going to pick up whatever is being said in the background as well as what they're saying. Let's talk a little bit more about the meeting search on our website. So at eascna.org, you can search for a meeting. And we're going to actually look at these, but to tell you a little bit about, we have basically 2 flavors of ways that you can search for a meeting on the online meeting list. There's a tabbed version and a meeting map. Nice thing about this tab version is it's very easy to look at things based on city, day, or you can even look up groups. And then once you find the meeting you want, you just click on the map button, and that'll take you right to a map of where it's located. On the map search, when you bring it up, it will typically center on the center of Eastern area, which is kind of the Tulsa area. Um, Sometimes depending on like if you bring up your phone, you have your location settings set right, it'll actually bring it up wherever you're at. But for Eastern area, it generally centers in Eastern area. The nice thing about this search is now you're seeing all the areas on a map, and then you can click on these NA icons, and that'll give you more information on the specific meetings they're located. And in this case, this is all the meetings in a given week. So you'll see any meeting in a given week will have a dot point on here. Let's switch over real quick and take a look at what that looks like on our website. So if you go to the main webpage and go to a meeting list, you'll see, first of all, you can always bring up the printed meeting list. So if that's something you need to have, you can have there, but then you'll see the tabbed and the meeting map. So on the tabbed list, when you bring that up, it'll default to the day that you're actually bringing it up. And so this is showing all the meetings on Tuesday in Eastern area. If I want to limit it by city, I can limit it just to Tulsa, and then it's just to show me Tulsa. But it's showing me now for any day of the week. You no longer have that day of the week. You can also, if you're looking for a specific group, you can search for that as well. The other option is using the meeting map. In this case, as I mentioned, it's going to come up on Tulsa. And now these individual icons, if you click on the icon, it'll give you more information about the meeting that is there. And for some of them, there'll be just a single meeting. But then for others, there will be additional days, and you can use a plus sign to draw it down. Keep in mind, if it's like a location like Jimmy's Place, you could have a whole bunch of meetings that could be listed. And you can zoom in and zoom out to find if you need to expand your area or move to, say, a different part of the eastern area. A couple things to keep in mind about the search on our website. One thing is that it's only showing meetings in what's considered the plain state zone. Uh, Basically, our eastern area belongs to a larger region, the OK region, and then that region belongs to a larger zone, which is called a plain state zone. And there's many zones throughout the country. The only reason why I tell you this and the reason that you should care about it is that if you are looking at our website at that meeting search, it's going to appear like there's no meetings in Arkansas and no meetings in Missouri. And there are certainly meetings in both those states, but they aren't part of our zone. And that's why they don't show up. So they don't show up on the website search. Now on the phone line, when they call the phone line, when it pulls from there, the caller certainly can ask for Little Rock, Arkansas, and that will come up because that version of the database is the entire BMLT database. So it's looking uh, throughout the country, throughout the database, and even you can get it for other countries if you want. But again, keep in mind that you may need to limit the search by providing the state as well. Another item I want to let you know about, certainly no requirement that you use this, but there is a phone app, both on iOS so for the iPhone and also on Android, that is specific for the BMLT search. So if you want to use this, some people like it because it has a little bit more intuitive map search. You just download that app and it will work to help you find different meetings. Just want to say something real quick about virtual meetings. This is a learning that we had from one of our volunteers here early in the year. Um, Got a call from an addict calling from Muskogee, and the addict was looking for a late night meeting, and the only late night meeting we had was in Tulsa, so that was a little too far away for them. Uh, Realize that there are virtual meetings out there, and there's virtual meetings all the time. And while these are not certainly part of our Eastern area does not specifically have any virtual meetings. These virtual meetings kind of exist, everywhere. So we don't want to necessarily talk, if you have no experience with virtual meetings, we don't expect you to talk in any detail about what those are. But realize that there are addicts, particularly addicts in remote areas in our Eastern area, that virtual meetings might be a good option for them. And we just want to let them know that there's resources out there. So two resources that we suggest that you pass on to them. One is this virtual-na.org, and the other one is the meeting search at our world site at NAWS. And I'm going to take a moment to show you what each one of those looks like. The world site is only more recently been listing virtual meetings, but it is a good way to do it. Even though I'm going to show you the NAWS in just a second, in my opinion, this virtual-na.org is a little bit more intuitive search. Important thing to look at is when you first go on, you're going to see that like as of right now, there's over 3,000 meetings each week as virtual meetings, and they're happening all the time. And so when I go to this virtual NA, it gives me a listing, and it by default knows that I'm looking at it on Thursday, and it just starts right away on midnight. There's one going on. There's several going on, potentially every hour of the day. Now, important thing to keep in mind: some of these are in different countries, some of these are different languages. That's something that you have to look more. Some use Zoom as a way to meet. Some use other applications. Some are just phone. There's a lot of different shapes and flavors. You don't have to necessarily know that. Just you can pass on that. Hey, here's a resource that they can use to look that up. And the nice thing about this website too is it has a lot more information about how to do what they can expect when they do a virtual meeting and how to get Zoom and other things like that. The other place you can go, as I mentioned, if you go to the na.org, the world website, if you go and look for a meeting there, so find NA near you, you get two options. One is you can find a brick and mortar meeting, and you can find virtual meetings. So if I go first to the virtual meetings, the first thing it's going to do there is ask me the language. That's a good thing to have that established right away. And then it has a similar format, but I kind of like the other virtual NA dash NA a little bit better. But this is another option. You can see the virtual. Now, one of the things to keep in mind, at one point, World tried to keep a listing of NA meetings, and that has been a challenge for them to do for a very long time. So, very recently, here in 2024, they have switched over. Rather than try to track meetings, they are now tracking service bodies. So, if someone goes to here and searches for Tulsa, they'll bring up the Tulsa area. It's going to look like the BMLT search, and it is uses something similar tool that it has there, but this is not giving locations of meetings, it's giving locations of service bodies. So like here, it's now going to give them a link to get to our Eastern area website. And so it tells them you're going to go to that. It's also going to show them our regional website as well as other areas. And you can expand, the search for this if you want to as well. So, some final thoughts on the training. One thing you want to make sure you do if if you are going to continue and be a phone line contact, you want to add our phone line number. So add that 888 number as a contact in your phone, just so you know that hey, here's a phone line coming in, so you can give it the importance that it needs to have. Make sure that you read the phone line guidelines and know that the phone line training slides are out there for you to review as well. um, don't be afraid to reach out and ask for help. This is true. At any point you can reach out to the phone line coordinator with that phone at eascna.org. And big thing, we just want to make sure you know that we greatly, greatly appreciate your service. We appreciate your willingness to even consider doing this. And if you decide to take the next steps, we're very grateful that you're willing to do that. So, what are the next steps? If you haven't already done so, please go back and review the phone line guidelines in their entirety. Once you have done that, the next step is to send an email to the phone line coordinator. Make sure that you include that, hey, I've watched the training. I've also reviewed the guidelines. Make sure you provide your email and the phone number that you want to use with the phone line. And then make sure that you also give them a day and a time slot that you would like to volunteer. We often get questions of, "Oh, what time do you need?" It changes all the time. We can tell you, as you might assume, there are more people that volunteer kind of during the day and in the evening, and less, late at night and throughout into the early morning. But again, each slot we like to fill three deep. So just pick what is a time slot that you think will work for you, and please send that. Once you've done that, the phone line coordinator is going to get back in contact with you, and they will complete the orientation process. They might have some additional information that's changed since we made this training, and they'll confirm the dates and times that you want to volunteer, and just hopefully start that communication. Again, appreciate you taking the time to go through this training.